Hello, everyone. What is the light that keeps imagination alive? In today's episode, Mr. Within would like to see how imagination is real to the human being. So, the reason I speak about light is because without light, there's no world to be seen. Light is the most crucial factor of our existence. And there's perhaps a good reason why the ancient Egyptians worshipped light. It was the permission or a portal to another world. You see, we tend to think that portals are shimmering kind of discs of light we enter. But let me tell you, a portal is an access to a reality that was not accessible before. The ancient Egyptians realized that light was how they were existing in their mind. When I wonder what my imagination is, it has to do with what has been revealed to me through light, through photons. My approach is that the child's eyes open. It gets access to sensory data. This sensory data is duplicated behind its eyes, but it's duplicated in a space where the attention can move the image. So externally, when your attention goes on stuff, it doesn't necessarily move the thing. So for example, there's a cup of coffee in front of me. Just because my attention is there, it doesn't move, but my attention brings its reality, it brings its realness. So in some sense, the attention externally cannot move phenomena, but internally can move the duplicate kind of abstract version of the world. Now, how the world exists is very profound. I thought at first it was only conceptual. I thought behind my eyes was just images, was just words, and in some sense that was it. But then later on, I realized it is a kind of flexibility of solid image. That means I could see, for example, the tree in winter, but behind my eyes, I can see that tree in summer. That flexibility, that ability to see other ways of the existence of a phenomena is the most important thing we have to cherish and protect in the eyes of the future generations. The easiest thing is for the species not to care for what it has. That is the biggest regret. The reason people will have regrets in their life is because they will come to moments where their skill and ability could have extended beyond the limit of that moment. So I'm right now looking at this coffee cup. Externally, I see a coffee cup. Internally, the coffee has a different story, the cup has a different origin, and the whole moment can have various origins. So my experience is that internally my attention is multidimensional. Externally it is in a singular dimension. Externally you have to care for the laws of the world. You have to care for what is given. Kind of like you're doing a math exam, the problem is given. That given problem is external reality. Now, the inner reality is the unknown factor that motivates the whole equation of living. So you see, we cannot consider the human being without unknown dimensions to it, because we have constantly been fascinated by the effort and endurance of human beings. Even though our species has made many mistakes, it has at least given its max effort, as if something that was perfected by our ancestors was their effort. And the issue is, if life is a program, if we look at it as a program of biology, a program of the DNA, if we look at it as a cultural program, if we look at everything as if it's a structure built throughout time, then it will not be easy to change it. You know, you cannot, just because you disagree with the ideology of your lineage doesn't mean every person in your that has extended from your lineage should in some sense change that ideology as well. My approach is that if it doesn't feel natural, most likely its motivation is just internal. You have to respect the living world. You know, those people who are good with animals, they actually have minds that are very sensitive, because they can appreciate how life can exist without their disturbance or involvement. That is what you learn from nature, that it is this bigger thing going on and you're a part of it. But how you establish a relationship with the vastness, with the macrocosmic picture of the world, with how big things are, is that it reaches the edge of how small you think you are. You know, so if I ask you, do you have the strength to move a mountain? And you will be like, no, man, nobody has the strength to move a mountain. You know? And I will tell you that mountains can be moved. How can I tell you? It's like you change your angle. The small changes its approach to the big, rather than the big having to completely change. The ability of our free will providing a multidimensional kind of position for the human being is a gift. It's the fact that we can see one dimension in many ways. In many ways, your mind generates many viewpoints on the same phenomena. That's its power. So the thing about meditation is, I laughed because they said you got to have single pointed attention. What does that mean? That means pretty much these yogis, these ancient mystics, they would just look at one point in reality and they would concentrate on it until they saw beyond the glitch. They saw glitches in the linguistic simulation, and their experience frees you. If you notice, you know, regardless of how much someone speaks to you, it is not as valuable as when you experience something. Like, somebody can explain to you what skydiving is like, but you can't know it truly until you skydive. And so there are many things with the world, many systems that require a person's active conscious engagement. But if the person's consciousness is fragmented into various engagements internally, then they will be in one moment, but it will feel to them as if they're in many moments. So there is a way that a person can feel multidimensional, which doesn't have to do per se with objective reality. It has to do with how objective reality is being interpreted. It can be interpreted in many ways. That means the scientist looks at the tree and says there's an atomic existence there. The scientist sees the electrons in the tree, you know. Then there is then the religious man who looks at the tree, and he looks at the tree, and what he sees behind the objective reality of the tree is, for example, the reality of a divine will. You know, I was during my time in my childhood where I was born in Iran, and when I was in that environment, I noticed something very profound. You know, it's like the secular society should be proud of itself, but it shouldn't be arrogant. Let me tell you why. I have been in environments where literally the people did not want to know further. They did not care for understanding because they felt they had the ultimate belief. And that's dangerous. Any civilization where there is not a change of ideology in the minds of people is a is a society, not civilized, a society that is not free. You see, because freedom has to do with the freedom of the mind of the being. This doesn't mean you can go out and say anything you want, even though we consider freedom of speech to be that. It means if you feel as a being there is an efficient reality to engage, you are free to do so. You see, because when you look at law, especially for various governments and societies, what you see is attitudes that are approved and attitudes that are not approved collectively. If you go into an Eastern kind of religious environment, there are many attitudes that are not approved. Even me speaking about metaphysics and the true nature of what the soul could be is not approved. It's something where if I'm sure that there's definitely probably strict Abrahamically religious minded people who when you ask them to wonder about who they are, they will deny the search because they believe it is God's secret. And you see, for me, whether it's monotheism, polytheism, whatever kind of theism it is, it's all bowing down to an unknown force. That's the whole point. The only reason religions have continued is because they give the human being an access to a relationship with the unknown. That's the point of religion, guys. That's why it's stuck around so long. Because it was one of the first attempts to establish a relationship with a living universe. However, in the 6th century, they could not distinguish between the inner reality and the outer reality. They thought it was just the outer reality. Behind their eyes, their questions did not go further than just the soul. In 2019, it's like it's been a while since religions came out, and this is what I think has happened. When you look at the Abrahamic religions, at least from the Islamic viewpoint, Abraham, he in some sense went to where Mecca is, where a lot of Muslims, when they pray, their attention goes to a certain direction. I don't think everybody knows this, right? But Islamic people, when they pray, they're not praying at a random direction. They're praying at a direction where Mecca is. Mecca is this holy city where in it there's this house that looks like a cube, and that house was from the very early on, before it truly became Mecca, at its first position, it was pretty much a house of gods. What that means is it was a house where many people had altars of statues. It was idol worship. So you got to understand the Abrahamic religions were a countercultural response, but divinely orchestrated as considered through their lens, to idol worship. So some dude was like, yo, this piece of rock and wood is my God. And Abraham was like, what do you mean that's your God, man? And so there you can totally see the strength of the introduction of an idea, because an idea, if it's born, if it has reasons to be strong, it will be strong. You cannot choose to be strong if you don't have reasons or motivations for it. So anyways, let us there's the story of Abraham. Pretty much a bunch of people have their statues and idols in this house of God, in this Kaaba, before it was the Kaaba. And so Abraham comes and sees these people worshiping stuff. Literally, imagine you go to a garage sale, take that stuff home, and start worshiping it, like. And so, as Abraham saw these people worship, and hopefully I'm accurate with this story, but as people, Abraham sees idol worship going on once, where all these people have gone out. He takes a hammer or something, a stick, breaks all the other statues and puts the stick beside one of the statues. The people come back, they see Abraham chilling beside the statue, but they see like the shovel or whatever, like the stick beside the one of the statues that Abraham didn't break. And people are like, Abraham, did you do this? You're the only one here. And then Abraham's like, no, this one God, this one idol God kind of destroyed all the other idols. And so people suddenly snap out of a relationship which they have made sacred for themselves. Most children, whether they know it or not, they have made their parents' behavior sacred. until they soon realize the society their parents are behaving in. Because they don't have an access to the society, their parents' behavior is the ultimate. And it's not just their parents' behavior, it's the first wave of data that hit them. You know, if you have a child, just know every living day there's waves of data hitting that child. The attention of the child is the phenomena, and the attention of the child is increasing. Whether it's subconscious or whether it's indirect or whether it's direct. So, here's the cool thing. After Abraham broke those idols, I noticed the trend. I noticed first we were looking at stuff and we thought it was God. But after it was denied to us that stuff is God, what became God? It was language that came from the unknown. This was the badass thing about religion, where now religion is being kind of misused, I find. People don't value it. Though even those who are being extreme about it, they don't care about the religion. They care about themselves. That is why they use the religion. They adjust the religion to themselves, right? It's like some people say, you cherry pick what makes sense to you out of a picture that it doesn't matter how many people see it, it will never make sense. So for me, religion was establishing of a relationship with the unknown, but unfortunately, because of the people at the time were not that evolved, it translated into them worshiping language. So rather than revelation being an every moment thing, it became one time thing, and nobody else could get revelation afterwards. It's as if we thought that was it. And so the thing is, I am telling you, the people who worship, we went from idol worship to idea worship. And believe it or not, till 2019, as sophisticated and advanced and intellectual our species thinks it is, it's idea worship. It's just being recycled in modern ways, you know? So what is after idea worship? If Mr. Within is saying in 2019 people are worshiping, they are worshiping ideas, and it's hilarious. It's hilarious because this is how you know somebody worships an idea. You, when you communicate an idea that is not to them, if they react to it, if the person gets angry because of language, because of communication, that person is a heavy idea worshiper. They're legit going in the mirror every day and worshiping that idea. Yeah, it's me, this is mine, this world is, you know, it's as if it's a kind of strange monologue of chaos with yourself. I find everybody has it. I mean, of course, you cannot polish the sharpness of your decency without the chaos of your indecency. So what that means is, in this life, I thought all my teachers had to be good. Everything had to be good. That's how life should be lived. Good. Everything's good, 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 good. You know, and then I realized, wait a minute, where am I getting my idea of good from? And then my mind had already acknowledged the bad, and I laughed. And I realized, the whole, any idea, the only thing it can do is put you in a way, set you up in a certain mode to approach things. I'm going so far as to say in these talks, like this is one of those Mr. Within things I'm saying. You are attributeless at your core. The Yoga Patanjali Sutras, thousands of years ago, they said your soul, your consciousness is like a glass orb moving around colored surfaces. So think of your whole moment of being as a glass moment moving around various environments, and then your personality is animated as a response to the environment you have stepped in. You know, a person's personality is not just based on who they are internally, it is also how the external is being approached. The other thing is Marcus Aurelius. Ooh, let me bring you quotes from a Caesar. You know, we don't have to just eat Caesar salad. We can also, you know, consume Caesar's wisdom. Caesar says, the soul is dyed with the colors of its thoughts. And if you don't know what dyed means color, pretty much. It's a method for coloring cloth, you know. So what he means is that your thoughts set the tone of the moment. And as your thoughts set the tone, because they set the tone, your karma is based on how you express yourself. So when this is one of those things that Mr. Within will say, if you find yourself in a moment where the unknown has chaotically communicated to you, you have to be still and silent. You have to become a watcher of the moment and watch how the experience influences your life. You know? I ask myself often, where are we evolving next? You know, let's say Darwin was onto something incredible. Let's say Darwin noticed we are changing animals. Because the world changes, so does the animal in it. I mean, evolution can be, it doesn't need to have too much of a sophisticated evolution, sophisticated idea behind it. You know, it's all about how the world changes, and so do you. Now, I find that every lifetime has a value. So I find people are using time wrong. First reason why people are using time wrong is because time for them is fragmented. It's rather than being a moment where phenomena is being generated and a meaning is being extracted from one moment of phenomena, it's been divided into segments. So you had a past self, you're a certain self now, and you have a future self. So this is, I say wrong, I mean, I'm saying this is like the old update, you know? You got to use the new update of time, which means a new relationship with thought. And the greatest relationship that can be attained with thought is observance. Pretty much you're either the thought or you're the observer of the thought. If you are the thought, your life is defined, go play in the playground of your ideology. If it is not, then you have to observe. And in that observance comes the command of the empty page before a single word was written on it. That is the nature of the moment. It is pure. People think emptiness is chaos. No, emptiness is a strange sort of purity. It's as if you cannot reverse engineer something without going towards an emptiness. So when man tries to figure out the world of his creation, he's reverse engineering his ideology. This is why I say there are certain chaotic truths about the limits of the technology of language that the human being is using to truly comprehend the nature of this world. It's a limited technology, guys. There's so many experiences that cannot be put into words because they're multi-local. That means it's as if like I'll give you an example. Years ago, I was raking leaves in my yard on a sunny day. It was a bit windy too, and in Toronto, Canada, okay? And as I was raking these leaves, I started holding the rake from like literally my hand was holding the edge of the bottom of the rake. And I was raking like that. It was like this long rake, but I was holding it like a sword, you know? And as I was raking like that, you know, suddenly my mind in the middle of an objective present action. So I'm just raking leaves, and as I move the stick, my mind animates a version of myself that is using the stick like one of those martial art movies where the person fights. What do you? How would I say? It's as if in my mind There was a world of experience simultaneously as I was in an objective world of experience. This is why I say you don't live an objective life only, you live a subjective life, and you're taught nothing in your educational system about the subjective life, because in order for us to really give it a position of meaning, it has to make transparent and in some sense hollow the other positions. So you have to sacrifice the past for the future, because it's kind of like the past is the firewood for the furnace of the future. And I'm being serious by that. That means if right now if I ask you what do you do with your memories, most people are like, yo man, you can't do much. They're just memories. They're just images that float around and come to you if you remember them. And I'll be like, okay, but you can use their design. Nothing comes to you without changing your energetic expression. These words that you're hearing even from me, it's like whether you drink a glass of water or you eat food or you listen to something, just the nature of movement is a new experience. We are, it's as if I ask myself, why? Why in a world filled with emptiness should there be stuff? Why does the design of the human being open its eyes? And you know what I noticed? What if our verbs are not enough? What if it is too multidimensional? What if right now, this is why ancient mystics, they had a respect for the natural world that did not extinguish the light of the unknown. You see, it's as if human life is like a candle. Literally, they've lit a candle, you have consciousness, you're in a certain body of design, and so this candle is lit and it's illuminating its surroundings. The candle cannot be said to be the sun. The candle cannot be said to be God. It is simply a sphere of awareness. You know, it's like if for the secular mind, the metaphysics should be geometrically relevant to the atom. What I mean is that the secular society's metaphysics is going to be geometry. Life has a motivation. You have to find that motivation. For the spiritual man, that motivation came from when the unknown communicated to the known. For the non-spiritual man, that it just had to do with how far knowledge evolved. So this is the thing. I started to realize something profound. We on some level maybe look at like the billions of people around the planet who are still in certain religious architecture, like the language of their mind is restricted to religious ideology. So what that means is there is billions of people who only see one version of the world, and at the same time they see a certain specific version of the world. And true leadership has to do with efficiency. So for me, it's as if all the actions of my life, they have to either, it's as if they are motivated by its contribution to the efficiency of what will happen. It's like that's the coolest thing. You know, you've already lived through the past, so the past is done with. You're living in the present moment, so that's done with. The only thing left is the future of this light of this candle that is here, and the candle must pass on its light. That's the whole point of existence that's kind of forgotten. There's no teacher or students. Every living phenomena should pass on what it sees that it feels if the world saw it would help it. That's it. And we're going into an interesting time because the era of ideal worship is leading to an apocalypse of knowledge. When this happens, we're going to, oh man, the educational system will be seen as a dream. It will be a dream. It is not education. It's like, for me, the educational system is like just choosing what is the most important. And it's choosing economical value. It is not choosing intellectual value. If it did, you know, Western media that controls the eyes and attentions of many people would have an intellectual injection in its content. What it is that every person has to understand your existence is a part of someone's world. The parent that doesn't care for the eyes of its children will be careless. The person who doesn't care for their own eyes will also be careless. Because your intelligence has a value that cannot be found at first. Some actions, they are for the future, so you will never know. It's like the dude planted a tree, the seed for a tree, and he's not going to be around to sit under its shade. Very common. Very common that human beings live without their efforts being acknowledged by the collective. It is kind of like savage on some level, but it is what was meant to. This is why it's kind of like we don't remember the scribes throughout history that passed on knowledge. We just care for what they passed on, right? We don't. The problem is there is no way the governmental powers can, in some, the governing powers can, uh, what's the word I'm looking for, can calculate the citizen's mindset if the citizen does not communicate it. The era of ideal worship ends when the inner realities have found a way to be externalized. There is a world behind your eyes that deserves to be shared. That's when life begins to have meaning. When your effort is engaged and like your subconscious mind is no longer at war with the world. This is the issue with the ego. It gives you a subconscious, like here's the thing about the ego. It's like literally a hall of, it's like standing between two mirrors. The ego gives itself infinite power. You can literally sit in one moment and feel like, yo, I'm gonna conquer the world, like Genghis Khan or something. Like the mind can project an infinite possibility for itself, but it will see that it chooses real possibility over abstract possibility. So a reconsideration of light in your eyes being phenomena is pretty much enlightenment. I wondered about it not as a curious fool, but as a person who was stepping in, walking in his own world, realizing how his own world was a product of the world in front of him. Many things a person believes not because they have experience for, because due to survival instincts, you have to go with the tribe. There's many ways that my personal existence and my pure solitude, like with that moment where I'm in the shower kind of singing, in the shower kind of, like when I say singing, I mean I do mantras. I say mantras sometimes. And I am familiar with a sort of what I say it's a trance state. And a trance state is a rhythmic abidance with the universe, how the universe is being in that moment. There's different spaces of freedom, different moments that provide a different access to the moment. I'll tell you this: when I was younger, life gets karmic turbulence when you think it is not multidimensional. It's like the guy who had parallel senses of self went to heaven, and suddenly that guy asked God before entering heaven, he's like, God, which parallel self of mine is entering heaven? The mind is a tool, it's an instrument. This is the best metaphor for your mind. Your intelligence is an instrument that you intuitively learn to play as you become honest with what is happening. Honesty harbors a strength in it that it's like in no tyrant can have it. That you can have the richest and cruelest and most powerful person, right? And they will collapse when they realize somebody has attained all that power honestly. You see the difference? You see the difference? We often have to lie to ourselves to give ourselves justification for our animalistic desires to happen. I say this, it happens that you will lie to others But in some sense, you can never lie to yourself. Sometimes I've spoken to people and I have wondered, how is this person seeing me right now? And I realize I have no control over how meaning is generated in others. What you have control is how meaning is generated within your experience. The free will is actually internally free. Externally, there's, how could there be free will? It's all like a program. It's all here. You know, did I choose how that tree looks like? You know, did I choose how all this phenomena is? I did not create the world before I was born. And so what that means is we have awakened in phenomena through a sophistication of the evolution of the free will in accordance to the objective evolution and the subjective evolution occurring simultaneously. Then we have a sense of self that can own the world. It's as if your objective life, your subjective life is where you have free will. Your objective life, you know, you didn't choose the atoms that hover in space, you know. So what I'm telling you is meaning is generated. You are creating meaning in your life like the caveman smashing like a stick and sticks together or stones together, you know. I honestly think fire did not come from the caveman. I think it was lightning that hit a tree and a branch of a burning tree fell, and like some caveman took that branch and like accidentally threw it on hay or like technologies bring with them, of course, revelation. So just like how the caveman used the technology of sticks and stones to make fire something totally different than sticks and stones, the human mind is using language to generate, not to generate, to simulate reality, subjective reality. This is why the more broader, it's like the person who's read a dictionary sees more out of the subjective realm. I remember when I was in grade one, I was reading a dictionary. Like, I had come like at the age of 7 to Canada, and it was like very early. And I remember sorry, it wasn't grade one, it was grade three. Grade three in Toronto. I was like, I was reading a dictionary in class, you know. And I remember this girl was like, "Why are you reading the dictionary?" You know? And I had no good answer at that moment. It was like silence was my only answer at that moment. Yeah. But I'm telling you, later on realized the person who reads the dictionary, they have more expressive potential because like literally all branches of knowledge, they come down to words. Think about it. Your professor in whatever study, if it's physics, if it's language, whatever, you know, if it's even theology, whatever it is, there is specific language ascribed to a field of knowledge. And once you study that language, it opens your eyes because the world is communicated through language. The more ways you have, this is why for me it is more liberating to hear somebody speak than to read words on a book, because the tonal position of how they communicate the word brings with it a sort of context, a subtext. That subtext is where meaning is found. When you listen to a lot of these kind of like enlightened people on YouTube, you know, Eckhart Tolle, Muji, Sadhguru, all these people, you know, Papaji, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, Sri Ramana Maharshi, when you hear these guys, what do you see? You see just pretty much simple, honest people who their wisdom is in their experience, not just their conceptual frameworks. Because at the end of the day, the language of your mind will be pushed by the breeze as well, like dry leaves. What will remain is the roots of your experience, how you are an experience in this moment beyond the words you have been spoon-fed since your childhood. That is when the mind of the human being opens up. It's like a supernova explosion too. I see this in people. This is why certain kids, like I remember seeing my cousin, oh my god, my super young cousin, you know, I believe he was 5 at the time. And so long story short, there was another kid his age, and this was in my grandparents' house. And so what happens is my cousin he's playing with this he's playing with this thing, with this remote control of the TV, and this kid comes and takes the remote control from him, right? Then my this little cousin of mine, his name's Benjamin, he goes and takes a plate and puts another object in front of that kid. The moment that kid takes that object, he picks up the remote control. And I was mind blown by this. For a 5-year-old kid to do this, to have this kind of articulation of how to get something, I realized the mind of children is so advanced. And believe it or not, I think this has to do with commercials. The kid's mind nowadays, the young kid in this world, its mind will, whether it likes it or not, whether it's sitting in the car and hearing radio, or whether it's in some sense watching TV and a commercial comes on, a strange sentence came to my mind right now. It's as if when your soul realizes it's designed to be the moment, help the moment, your karma really fades away. Your karma, a person's karmic existence, has to do with the intentions found in their experience of life. Every experience brings with it an intention. Literally, you drink your tea and the glass is empty, so suddenly at the end of that experience, you feel, okay, let's go get another glass, you know? Let's bring the talk back to the title. So, a human being requires light to see the world. So light can be said to be a very important, crucial factor for our elemental existence, for our objective existence. Now, the person has access to the objective world through light, but when you close your eyes, there is no light. So how do you see phenomena behind your eyes? When you close your eyes and you imagine like who you were last year, like that sense of you is in some sense, when you close your eyes, there is no light, but the image appears. So what that means is the intelligence of the moment has access to image, whether it requires light or not. For a while I was like thinking, what is this? Is this a brain being influenced by sunlight hitting it? Right? So I thought that my imagination behind my eyes was only inspired out of the external light that in some sense went into my eyes, right? The data that the sensory perception kind of revealed, right? I thought my imagination was limited to that. Then I realized, no, it's as if you can sit and close your eyes and your attention can still maneuver to various thoughts. You can even sit still and silent in the moment and just the thoughts begin to pass, and eventually they will gain a momentum and they would speed up. The more still and silent and non-engaging you are with the phenomena of the world, the more you see it act by its nature. This is why there requires a huge state of indifference and mystical thought. This is why you suddenly find there were Zen koans and a lot of mystics. There was a sort of paradoxical context to their poetry, as if heaven and hell were the eyes of the person, but both eyes saw the same truth. So what it is that when you close your eyes, you actually have access and you're existing in your subtler planes. Your subtler planes actually are kept by, it's very strange. It's as if your mind is seeing things also, not just your biological eyes. This is why when you close your eyes, your mind can still see images. Do you see? The mind, there's a deeper sight. Our eyes are not just our biological eyes. The awareness of the whole moment is, to be honest, our true being. So if the whole moment is us, is who we are, then we can't just ascribe and associate to fragments of the moment. to what is the content in the moment. That means suddenly you realize you're not your body, you're not your thoughts, you're not the movement, you're not the changing world. You are the whole moment being all. It's kind of like, as Rumi says, you're not just a drop in the ocean, you're the entire ocean in the drop. You are the totality of cosmic presence as one moment. That means before you named your parents named yourself, you were just the cosmos looking at itself. You see, that is the profoundness. We step beyond language as if we were never in it. That's the style and class of the pilot of consciousness. One important question that I've asked myself is numerous times is, who do I live for? What do I live for? And what is alive? Now, of course, those are multiple questions, but who do I live for? You might not believe it. Since 2000, to be honest, truly after 2011, but in 2014, I realized there is something more important than myself. It is the source of myself. Because on some level we conclude the human being is a social creature, yet at the same time its motivations are isolated. That means what is motivating your action is not because of what everybody else is thinking. Like if this was 200 years in the future and all our brains were connected to like one giant cloud or computer or something, you in that case, then yes, your thoughts will never be your thoughts. They're just patterns that the whole system is generating, right? It's this whole concept of one mind. It has been accessed in two ways. Technologically, the notion of your one mind is accessed through just this whole all of us plugging our heads into one computer. The other approach is that when you go look at nature, the soul of the moment is non-dual. There's a non-dual soul housing itself in a dualistic realm. That is the magnificence of consciousness. It will eventually have instantaneous projection. This is why scientists are I believe neurologists are scared to reveal the truth about the mind. Let me tell you why. The question of the hard problem of consciousness and the easy problems of consciousness, those are just problems that are found in a certain approach. To be honest, scientists, I believe, neurologists, they're just realizing that it's a reality generating machine. It's instantaneous. Now, what does that mean? That means that, here, I'll tell you a great story. These disciples of this yogi and this guru who are in the forest in India, this is a Vedic story. The guru looks at one of the disciples and says, there's a bucket here, go get water for the whole tribe, for the whole group. And the guy goes and he follows his intuition, he finds a river. He goes to the river, he puts the bucket in the water or something. It's not a river, I don't know, maybe it's like some sea or whatever. And so he puts the water there and the bucket in there. I think it's a river. Yeah, it's definitely a river, not the sea. Yeah. So what happens is, as he puts the bucket in the water, he looks to his left and he sees an incredibly beautiful girl. He instantly walks up to the girl and says, "I love you and you have to marry me." And he means it authentically. The girl is like some divine beauty in his eyes, right? And so he says that, and the girl sees this man's true passion, and it's as if like the man's never seen anything more beautiful than that. Beauty is the closest thing to divinity. Not the closest thing, like a step before the heavens. It's a step on heaven's stairway. Anyways. So what happens is the girl looks at the man, and the girl was one of those girls who was just stuck at home, and she found a way to escape once, and suddenly this happens, and she's like, okay, you go speak to my father, and I'll listen from out the door. The girl's pretty smart. And so the man is in love, and the man says yes, and he goes. And so he finds himself in that moment where he's speaking to, his future father-in-law, and the girl's father, and the girl's listening from outside the door, and the father's like, tell me about your educational background. And the guy's like a yogi in like the forest, right? And he's like, I've studied for many years psychology. Anyways, the guy, the father-in-law sees the man's honesty and decency. He sees enough proof of it to kind of continue. And so what happens is the man gets married, and the father-in-law says something strange to the guy. He puts a condition for the marriage, and he says that the only way you can marry my daughter is that I've never had a son. I've only had daughters, and so you have to actually stay here forever and kind of be like my son, and also you're married with my daughter, like you're my son-in-law, you know. And so the man says, of course, and so the best thing happens, the best situation happens, and of course, I don't know if everybody else dies from thirst back in the forest, but, but so he goes and he totally forgets about the guru and the spiritual hood of his existence. Not, no, I shouldn't say that like that. Many years pass by. He has a daughter, he has a son. The father-in-law dies. All the land of the village becomes his. He's literally the most powerful and happiest and wealthiest man, and life couldn't be better and more perfect. And one day he's on a hill with his wife and his kids, and suddenly he sees something chaotic. He sees tidal waves. He's like, oh my God, how's this even possible? Like tidal waves are hitting and destroying the village completely. The tidal waves hit and destroy the village completely. And as it's happening, the most tragic thing happens. His son falls into the water. The daughter goes to save the son. In that moment, the mother goes to save the kids, and suddenly they're all swallowed by the water. And so this man, in an instant, he has lost his family. He has lost everything that gave him value in his life. Pretty much his personality died in that moment. And what happens is suddenly he hears a voice as he looks at that destruction. And the voice is the voice of the guru. And the guru is like, yo man, take the bucket out of the water. The guy suddenly snaps out, and it was all like a daydream. And he takes the bucket out of the water, and suddenly the guru smiles and he says, there, learn to walk in your world, because many worlds can take your attention. And so the whole moral of that story is that in one instant, that guy's mind created a beautiful girl, created a father-in-law, created a village, created land, property, wealth. You see, in an instant, the subjective realm can be self-gratified. In an instant, you can see yourself as the wealthiest person. Just concentrate and you can see. You can see a version of that in your mind. However, that version is not the reality. And this is the beautiful thing about truly living, that it has to do with a sort of honor and respect and fearlessness towards the unknown. Nothing is known too much. You can't know something purely referentially. So the light that keeps imagination alive is kind of how your attention is being your present moment. Your mind is being your moment is being your mind. That's the magnificence. What that means is when your mind is being the moment, the known is attempting to be the unknown. In some sense, when your moment is being your mind, that is when the unknown is in unknown ways your knowledge is moving. But before, in known ways, you were moving the unknown. You were trying to articulate divinity. This is why enlightenment is kind of like, they say this wisdom saying about it. They say it's like you don't chase the butterfly. You sit still, silent, content among the lotus, and then the butterfly lands on your forehead. What that means is you cannot force life to be true. And those people soul searching too hard, that's what they're doing. They're trying to force life to be true. They're just like wanting to buy a new video game and play it. They're looking for spirituality, theosophy, and the other dimensions as a video game to be a character in. This is why people are so easily consumed by ideology. Ideology can be cruel, but the more it is flexible and provides freedom to the actual natural being, it's as if there's your subtler planes navigate more efficiently. Somebody asked Ramana Maharshi, what's meditation? And Ramana Maharshi's like, meditation is your true nature, buddy. And the guy's like, what do you mean, my true nature? And what that means is you are not meditating to upgrade yourself like a transformer becoming a better car, more enlightened car. You are not transforming the self. You are watching your moment, and truth happens as its own dance. That means you let go of all your beliefs and you just wonder what nature will bring you. And you suddenly see, then in the honesty of your life, you actually see, you get fruitful experiences of life. Then the light that keeps imagination alive has to do with the intention of the attention behind your eyes, which is being the whole moment. So you become a master of your attention, and so the sensory phenomena serves you. But if you're not a master of your attention, if you're not a captain of the ship of your free will, then guess what? You'll be steered around by the forces of nature. That is the power of the free will. It is our sword and shield against the unknown. It is the grand raging rebellion against what we do not know. This is why I'm saying it's all about the story we tell ourselves. You look at the movie Independence Day, when the whole species is being attacked by an extraterrestrial civilization, then we're like, holy, by a foolish extraterrestrial civilization. What happens is, like, in that moment, there's no more wars between countries. It is a war between the survival and continuity of the species. Do you see? So the whole world, all the nations become united as a response to a greater threat. So Mr. Within is saying we don't have an alien invasion now, but it makes sense to adopt that mentality where the unknown is what we all are tackling. It's as if there's this giant kind of tiger that the whole species is trying to, that the tiger is trying to eat the species, and the species has to, in some sense, defeat this tiger. And even though it may be cruel and ruthless, but it must do it. And this giant tiger is the unknown forces of nature. Our species is like a bubble, and this bubble is being hit by various waves of natural forces. One huge philosophical debate is evil natural? And some philosophers say no, it's a construct. It's literally a program that's, the child doesn't know what to do with the program, so the program devours the child. The child thinks it has to remain violent because that's how the world moved forward. You see, people are trying various things to see how their moment moves forward, advances forward. If they find it in an evil way it works, they will continue it. It's kind of like a practical application thing, right? The evil man got what he wants by being evil, so why not continue a pattern that works? But the issue is the pattern works for a certain time, and overall, from a macrocosmic perspective, the pattern didn't work at all. You see, sometimes you may think you have found the genius of the moment. Every moment of being, there is a genius idea that can be accessed. Literally, like how stones can be placed on one another, like on a beach, like in front of, like, you know what I mean? Like you balance stones on one another in a unique way. There's a genius to that. So every moment holds within it a genius kind of. It's like at the edge of the threshold of what has not been thought of. There's always a new vision that can be extracted in every moment. To be honest, the free will breathes through novelty. I hope this talk has served you guys. Much blessings and namaste.